What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. This snowstorm, the final edges of it are leaving the United States. It's currently over Ohio at this current point. It's going to be exiting by tonight for much of the U.S., for much of the East Coast, for Maryland, for Delaware, and for parts of New Jersey as well. But we have another big threat that we're going to have to watch, as well as the Arctic cold that is continuing to settle in through much of the Midwest, through much of the South, and we're going to have to watch it going forward. So we have a lot to talk to you about today. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. So here's the situation that we have going on right here. First off, from the National Weather Service, we still have winter storm warnings in effect from Indiana all the way to the East Coast. Let's go ahead and check on a couple of those very quickly. We're going to start with Washington, D.C. to see how this is going to wrap up and get the additional snow accumulations. Total snow accumulations of 6 to 10 and up to 12 is possible. This was issued at 8:39 Eastern Time this morning. For Baltimore, let's go ahead and take a look at that as well. Similar situation as well. So this storm is going to be dying down. I know Matt's really excited about all the snow he's gotten over in Maryland, so I'm pretty happy about that. I can't wait to see him tomorrow as well. We also have a winter weather advisory in effect for lake effect snow for parts of the Chicago area, but that's not too important. I'll briefly go over it very quickly since it is part of the storm, but here's the general gist of what we're seeing. We're seeing additional snow accumulations of up to 1 to 2 inches. I'm not too worried about it at this current point. Yes, it could cause a few travel issues if you're in the Chicago area, if you're in Waukegan, if you're in downtown Chicago. That's a little bit concerning, but that's the main stuff that we have going on right there as the storm continues to die down. However, we have some new stuff that we're going to have to take a look at, starting with the Arctic cold. Let's go ahead and pull that up as these runs continue to show that. Let's go ahead and pull up the surface temperature for the HRR. Actually, not the HRR. We can use the RAP since that goes pretty much all continental United States right here. Right now, you have this high pressure system entering the United States. Right now, the temperatures are extremely cold across much of the Great Plains right here as the storm has continued to pass. It's expected to push deeper and deeper into the Midwest in the next couple of days. And you also have temperatures in the lower 30s, upper 20s across much of the South right here, and that is a very big concern that I have right there. Matter of fact, if we go ahead and even show you the NAM for a longer range forecast, it gets colder and colder and colder until Friday morning for much of the Midwest and much of the South. So we're going to have to pay attention to that. Matter of fact, Thursday morning, like early Thursday morning, for Atlanta, we're seeing temperatures in the lower 20s. And that freezing line goes all the way down to the Florida Panhandle and for parts of Central Florida. Tampa Bay gets down to 39 degrees Fahrenheit. Parts of Savannah gets below freezing. South Carolina gets below freezing. Even a lot of areas in the Florida Panhandle do get a lot below freezing. However, Miami and those areas aren't as affected by it. Your temperatures are still going to be relatively warm by the end of the by like 60 degrees by the end of the week. But at this point, this Arctic blast is continuing to affect much of the United States, and this is going to stay for quite a while as we look at our new snowstorm that we're potentially looking at, because now we're seeing more runs come in. We're seeing the NAM initialize it. We're seeing the GEM RDPS initialize it. We're seeing the GEM GDPS initialize it. We're seeing the Euro doing Euro things, and the GFS in their 12Z run really went haywire with this run, because before the GFS was quite skeptical about how much snow was going to fall, especially in the mid-Atlantic and northeastern United States. Now the GFS is dumping a crap ton of snow, and we're going to go ahead and talk about all of those runs right now. So here's what we have for winter precipitation type for the NAM. Here's how the storm is going to organize and develop. How this is going to organize right here is what we're gonna have to pay attention to is where this low pressure system develops. We have a high pressure system right now over much of the United States right there. However, we have a low pressure system organizing and developing off the Gulf of Mexico right here, and allowing for potential snow to organize and develop off the lee of the Rocky Mountains in New Mexico and in parts of Mexico as well. And then you start seeing snowfall across much of northern Texas, including the Dallas-Fort Worth area, which I've seen some runs indicating multi-snow accumulations for those areas right there. The NAM is no exception as it initializes this. And this setup right here that we're looking at, especially how it's organizing and developing off the Gulf of Mexico, this is what is kind of what you would see as your precursor to a classic nor'easter setup, ladies and gentlemen, where basically you have a low pressure system, developing in the Gulf of Mexico. It then traverses through the Gulf, and then it develops a secondary low off the Atlantic Ocean, and then it moves up further to the north, and then it brings a crap ton of snow and a lot of wind for areas in the Mid-Atlantic and northeastern United States. This is the precursor to that development right here. If we go ahead and show you the GEM RDPS, similar situation as well. The low pressure system organizes in the Gulf of Mexico, brings a lot of moisture up for this storm, and it potentially brings up heavy snowfall rates. We're looking at snowfall rates close to an inch per hour, over an inch per hour in parts of Texas over here. Let's go ahead and zoom in on this real quickly. I know it's a little bit more difficult to see right here, but potentially 2-inch rates per hour according to the GEM RDPS. That's quite the situation that we're looking at with this storm right here. So you have the initialization, you have all the models calling for it in the next few days or so. So now the main question is, how is it going to develop in the long term? Well, there's two paths I am noticing with this. Let's start with the GEM GDPS at the 12Z. As it organizes and develops, there is going to be more snow that falls to the north in areas in the Midwest that were already crippled by ice, and that's going to cause even more problems for areas in southern Missouri and Kentucky, southern Illinois, southern Indiana. The good news for you guys, though, is it's at least going to be all snow and not as much freezing rain, because it's too cold for that to happen. And for those wondering why there's going to be no severe weather with this system, it's because the Arctic blast that's coming into the United States right now through that high pressure system, what's happening with that is it's keeping the temperatures way too low. And yes, there's a lot of moisture in the atmosphere because of the storm, but because of those temperatures, it's not warm enough to generate the type of severe weather and the type of forcing you would need for severe weather. Like, we're not going to really be seeing nearly as strong as of a storm initially compared to what we were seeing last time with that Colorado low. But as we get to the East Coast, you might want to pay attention to that. But it is going to bring snow to Oklahoma. It's going to bring more snow to Kansas, to Missouri, especially the Ozark Plateau as that continues through, and then into Illinois, Indiana, Ohio. So you're getting a second round of storms. It might not be as powerful as this one, as this wave we had beforehand, but still could dump 3 to 6 inches, maybe even localized amounts of up to 8 in a lot of these regions in the higher elevations as well. The GEM GDPS is also giving North Carolina a bit of an ice storm all the way to the coast, and same with South Carolina and parts of Georgia. Atlanta gets freezing rain before it transitions into regular rain or snow, and then it moves off the East Coast. It doesn't impact the Mid-Atlantic or the Northeast as much compared to the GFS, but that's one scenario we are looking at. Regardless, either scenario is pretty bad in my opinion, because you're going to get more ice in parts of Georgia and parts of the South that are not used to this kind of weather. And now you have the GFS right here. Here's the GFS we have pulled up. Initializes over Texas, initializes in the Gulf of Mexico right here, organizes and develops and really brings quite a bit of snowfall to Kentucky, to Tennessee, to Georgia, and the Carolinas. And then it develops a secondary low off the coast of the Carolinas, and it really ramps up in intensity. Let's go ahead and zoom in and look at this pressure right here. Here's the pressure we're looking at with this, 979 millibars. That is absolutely crazy to take a look at right here, and that is just off the coast of New Jersey, and then it moves through much of New England and brings heavy snowfall to a lot of regions over there, and that is a huge storm that we are going to have to pay very, very close attention to. Now, in terms of snow accumulations, things aren't exactly complete just yet, particularly with the mid-range runs as of right now, but we can get a general idea of what we're potentially going to be looking at. So let's go ahead and show you the GEM GDPS right here. Now, granted, some of it is a little bit biased because of this snow that's exiting the Mid-Atlantic region right here, but look at this. The GEM GDPS is bringing a lot of snow for parts of Texas right here. I can't unfortunately zoom in on this, unfortunately, but we can kind of extrapolate this. The GMGDPS wants areas in southeastern Oklahoma to get up to 18 inches of snow, and areas just north of Dallas-Fort Worth to potentially get over a foot of snow. That is pretty insane to me. Now, granted, that freezing rain line is pretty tight right here, so we're going to have to pay attention to see how this evolves. And in my humble opinion, I think 18 inches of snow, especially for southeastern Oklahoma, is a little unrealistic. I still could see potentially up to a foot of snow for a lot of these regions in Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and into the Ozark Plateau as well, which they're generally expecting around 10 inches of snow or so. And then in the St. Louis area, on top of what you're already got from this event, which, by the way, the latest totals I've seen reported for is potentially up to a foot of snow, you're getting an additional 7 to 8 inches of snow on top of that. That is going to be pretty problematic, and this snow is expected, according to these runs, to come in on Friday. Yeah, you're gonna, if this verifies, there's gonna be a lot of businesses and a lot of schools closed again with the storm, and this is kind of the start of a very active winter pattern. But the GEM GDPS doesn't bring nearly as much snowfall for much of the mid-Atlantic. It brings probably an additional 6 inches of snow for parts of the DC area and New Jersey, but not as much in parts of the mid-Atlantic regions over here. So that's the kind of thing that we're going to have to pay attention to. But the 12C GFS has been pretty interesting. Let's go ahead and pull this up. Granted, it is one model run, but oh my goodness, it's quite insane to say the very least. So here's what we have going on. Let's start with the southern Great Plains. For areas around the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and areas like around Collin and Denton County, you could see 6 inches of snow from this. Even in Fort Worth County, 4 to 5 is not out of the realm of reality. And in Dallas City in particular, you could see a few inches of snow from this if the GFS is to verify and hold. Now, granted, the GFS is calling for a more compact but a slightly more powerful type of system. Like in areas around Arkansas, you could see up to a foot of snow. And even in parts of areas like Little Rock, for example, you could see 7 to 8 inches of snow. Not as much in the St. Louis area, like 3 to 5 inches, depending on where you're at. But still, that is going to be a pretty considerable amount of snow on top of what you've already gotten, which is like 9 to 12 inches, depending on where you are in the St. Louis metro area. And if we go ahead and go to the Mid-Atlantic, this is when things get a lot more interesting. And the 12Z GFS kind of is eerily similar to what we saw with the European run yesterday. And I talked about this with you a little bit. The European is generally really good at sniffing out nor'easter types of setups and bringing a lot of snow for a lot of areas in the northeastern United States. But Philadelphia, the GFS wants Philadelphia, if I'm reading this correctly, to get almost 30 inches of snow. And over 30 inches of snow in parts of New Jersey. New York City gets anywhere from like 16 to 20 inches of snow. Boston gets around 15 to 18 inches of snow. And then it decreases as you go into Maine and all those areas right there. That is going to be pretty interesting. And if that GFS run does verify, that would be an absolute catastrophe for a lot of areas. I'm sure a lot of snow lovers would love it, but I'm sure a lot of people do not need another nor'easter. And if we go ahead and even go further south in areas like Baltimore and Washington, D.C., they're already going to see an extra 3 to 4 inches on top of this first snowstorm. This one in Baltimore could bring an extra 20 inches of snow almost, and D.C. an extra foot. If that verifies, then that's going to be quite a problem for not hundreds, but tens of millions of people from Boston all the way to Washington, D.C., and that is a very big concern that I have for that. Now, granted, this is just one model run, and we are seeing some inconsistency with the runs, but I am looking at these runs, and they are becoming more and more consistent. And regardless, too, even if this more southern track occurs and it stays out to sea after it leaves North Carolina, it's still going to cause a lot of problems for the deep south, for example. Here's what we're looking at for potential freezing rain. In parts of Georgia, especially a lot of areas in North Carolina, a lot of areas in South Carolina around Greenville, Spartanburg in particular, and even in a lot of areas of Virginia could see freezing rain from this. And a lot of these areas are not typically used to these kinds of conditions right here. Now, granted it's not snow. Obviously, you're not going to see that much snow in North Carolina from this compared to some of the earlier runs I've seen previously. And I can even show you the GEM GDPS. The GEM GDPS isn't even bringing that much snow outside of the Appalachian regions in North Carolina. But regardless of that, it's something that we're going to have to pay very, very close attention to, and something we are all going to have to take very, very seriously. Another thing I do want to kind of analyze as well, we already talked about the pressure of the system. We already talked about the snow accumulation. I just want to see what the Europeans doing generally. The 12Z is not out, obviously, but the 6Z is definitely verifying where this storm is going to set up in Texas. And I want to take a quick look at this. The European is a bit more of a southward track, but it has Dallas-Fort Worth getting 6 to 8 inches of snow. And that's pretty concerning because that part of Texas hasn't seen that much snow since the 2021 Texas snowstorm. And the reason I think this is honestly realistic, normally if I saw runs like this, I'd be dismissive of them. I'd say, yeah, this is just one run. I'm not trusting it. 6 to 8 inches of snow in Dallas, that doesn't happen too often. It's in fantasy land. But the reason I am looking at this and the reason I am trusting this is because of the pre-existing temperatures. We're already going to be below freezing in a lot of these areas. Let's go ahead and look at the temperatures real quickly. We're already going to be below, either right at or below freezing when the storm organizes and develops. It's realistic, honestly, from what I'm looking at, because we're looking at, 28, 29 degrees Fahrenheit for parts of Dallas-Fort Worth by the time the storm organizes and develops right here, by the time snow starts. At this current point, yeah, it's below freezing, and if it wasn't for that high pressure system moving into the U.S., I would dismiss this, but this looks like, at least for a lot of Texas, it's going to be kind of what I would say the perfect setup for another snowstorm. It's not going to be like over a foot of snow or anything crazy like that, but because this is Texas and this is not the Midwest, a lot of people don't know how to drive in snow, and a lot of people don't know how to act when it happens. And 8 inches of snow is an ungodly amount for, I'm sure, a lot of people in DFW, especially those who are moving in from other parts of Texas as well that don't see this. If you're in Houston, though, if you're in Louisiana and those areas, you're not going to see really any snow from this because you're too far south of that freezing line, thankfully. But Dallas-Fort Worth, you're going to have to watch out. Little Rock, you're going to have to watch out. Even Oklahoma City, that metro area, you're going to have to watch out. Now, granted, it's a little bit more uncertain in that region, but if you're in the St. Louis area, you're going to have to watch out for another round of snow on top of what you're already getting. And the snow you have right now isn't going anywhere anytime soon because of that Arctic temperature right there. And then if you're watching from the Mid-Atlantic region, yes, things are a little uncertain right now, but you're going to have to pay attention to it because the 6Z GFS didn't even have this scenario, nor did the 0Z GFS. Actually, never mind. They did have a scenario, at least to a lesser extent, happening, although it doesn't push as far to the north as this run does. The 0Z GFS had a similar situation, but bringing 20 inches of snow for parts of Virginia, southern Maryland, and Delaware. So ultimately, the synoptics are there for some sort of nor'easter. The question is it going to push further up to the north, or is it going to stay farther to the south and just bury Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, and southern New Jersey again? And that's the main question that we have at this current point, because the GFS is now becoming the more consistent model for this, so we're going to have to pay attention to it. But regardless of this whole situation, this is something you're going to have to watch out for. We're only a few days out. This is January 6th right now. All these models are calling for this to strike and develop on the 10th in Texas. And then by the 11th and the 12th, it's going to start approaching there. But I do want to highlight one other area that I haven't highlighted yet, and that is the Upper South. The Upper South is not used to this kind of snowfall as well, especially Tennessee and parts of Alabama and Georgia. 1 inch of snow in parts of Nashville can close the roads and close schools and all that stuff. And a lot of these runs are calling for anywhere from 5 to 10 inches of snow. I would not be surprised in the next couple of days if you start seeing winter storm watches flaring up in Texas, in Tennessee, in the Upper South. But I'd hold off so far on the Mid-Atlantic until we get a better consensus as to how strong it's going to be and how powerful the winds are going to be as well. So we're going to have to pay attention to a lot of factors. This does to me have the synoptics of a northeaster setup for a lot of areas in New York, Boston, Maryland, Virginia, those areas. So if you're tuning in from those areas, you're going to want to watch out for this. But in the meantime, we're going to have to keep you updated here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel, and I will update you as more information continues to come out. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. It helps us out, helps us get more people engaged with weather. If you want to come hang out with us at Storms United, be sure to join our Discord server. The link will be in the end screen. Also, shout out to Daniel as an official sponsor of the Pat's Path Predictor channel. If you want to come support the channel more directly, be sure to join the Pat's Path Predictor Patreon. It is the first link in the description down below. I would really appreciate that. You'll be shouted out in my documentaries. I'm currently working on the 2021 Texas Snowstorm documentary, so if you want to get shouted out in that, be sure to join that. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.